Welcome back to Rude Dude.
That's not okay. And I'll bring it down.
Welcome back to the Rude Dude podcast. I am your host, Enrique de la Mer, with my partner, Cameron, my friend, my buddy, my guy, my pal. How are you, Cam?
You know what, pal? I'm doing actually pretty good today, man. Pretty good. You know, the funny thing is that in Spanish, I think I've mentioned it on this podcast. Yes. It means shrimp. It means shrimp. Yes. My name means shrimp, dude.
I know. The lobster and the shrimp.
The lobster and the shrimp.
And you're the little one.
It honestly couldn't have any better than that.
Dude, so I'm in the shower thinking of how I'm going to introduce myself, right? And I'm like, Enrique. That's what comes to my mind. Enrique. And then I actually looked up how to say of the ocean in Spanish, but I fucking forgot already. So de la mer is actually French. So we got a little Spanish with a little French. And then I was like, Cameron. And I was like, oh my God, that's a fucking shrimp. We got fucking crustaceans gone wild over here, brother.
Dude, crustaceans gone wild. My new nickname is now just going to be the shrimp, dude. We're going to get rid of the Cree, and it's now the shrimp. I'm actually thoroughly surprised that it's taken us this long to make that correlation. That's awesome, dude. It's so funny. So anytime I tell like a super Hispanic person my name, they give me like a sly eye and they go, oh, it adds up there, you little limp dick.
Lobman, the adventures of Lobman and Shrimp.
Yeah, that's it, dude. That's it.
Awesome. Well, as the listeners and you may tell, I'm pretty fired up. I'm excited about this podcast. I'm excited about our guest, Podcast Thursday, and we have an important announcement. We have broken 4,000 total plays.
Yes. Big time for us. Podcast keeps growing. That may be minimal numbers compared to our prestigious guest that we're going to be coming in here. But for us, that's a big deal. This is episode 45. We are very excited about that. So thank you to all the listeners who have helped us cross that threshold, man.
Yes, sir. Well, my friend, without any further ado, should we bring in our guest?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I am going to bring him in right now. So we'll go to the awkward part of the podcast where we go and wait for him now.
What up?
All right, what's up, dude? Our guest today.
Am I in?
You're in. Our guest today, Jeremy Miller, and he actually worked at a rehab that I attended, and he does a lot for recovery. I've seen him throughout the years. Another guy that worked there, buddy of his and mine, Dallas, they do a lot of cool stuff together around recovery. So I thought it'd be really cool to have you on. Welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you guys for having me, man. I've loved watching you throughout the years since we knew each other out here in California. And, I've checked out the pod. I've done a couple episodes, and I love what you guys are up to, man. And I'm glad that you guys started it. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, dude, like I want to do a podcast, but there's too many and there's so many already. And it's like, yeah, but none of them have you. You know what I mean?
That's
and
right.
So I'm glad you guys went for it, dude, because I like what you're up to.
Thanks, man. Well, it's funny. I thought you were going to say a lot of people talk about it and never do it, which we did talk about it for like two fucking years before we ever did it. But
hey, but here you are, man.
We did it. Here we are.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah, dude, we got the receipts on that. I mean, it's an ongoing conversation. We got to start the podcast. I mean, we got to do it. We got to do it. And I mean, there really was no catalyst. Just one day we were just like, dude, let's fucking do it. And here we are. Thanks for the kind words, man. I appreciate that. And thanks for listening to the few episodes that you have, brother. I appreciate it. It's got to be super cool. And then I'll let Hen ask his first question. It's got to be super cool to sit here and be like, hey, I worked at a rehab and now I'm sitting here on this dude's podcast. Like that's gotta be dope.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite things about the work that I've done and the work I do is, it's up to us to pass the torch of recovery. It's up to us to fan the embers until they're flames. You know what I'm saying? And working in the biz as long as I have, it's a surreal feeling to see all these fires out here, man, and people just doing it. People, creating lives that once upon a time they didn't think were even remotely possible. The wildest dreams weren't this good. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that shit fires me up, dude.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's funny in this age of social media, like you said, you've been watching me over the years. So I have so many people from, I've been to rehab a few times.
Yeah.
From different rehabs and stuff where, some of it doesn't work out very well. And some of it, you see them out there shining and doing it. And it's a really like a beautiful fucking thing. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to keep up with them. And, you get those people that are just really out there doing it. And it's awesome to see.
Hell yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you have the unique perspective of someone who worked at a rehab that I attended. Do you remember anything about me? So let me set the stage. Well, first of all, this guy's on a fucking sweet ass deck out in Monterey. It's beautiful. He's barely got to wear a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah.
Dude, he looks like he's ready to go eastbound and down, dude.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
That headset, bro.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man. It's funny though, because I sat out here thinking it'd be all nice out. And then as soon as the sun started going down and I'm like, oh fuck, dude, it's a little colder than I thought it would be. But hey, dude, we're going to roll with it. You know what I mean?
He's going to be over there shivering by the end of the podcast.
Yeah, man.
But,
It reminds us we're alive,
So the rehab where I met you, it was a pretty big one. And there was a lot of counselors, a lot of clients. And so I don't think we personally spent a ton of time together. I know that I'm pretty sure you taught a couple classes, or I forget exactly what you even did there, to be honest. It was like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But do you have any memory of me and what I was like when I first got there?
Damn, was it really 8 years ago?
I had my 28th birthday in Elevate. I am 36 years old.
Holy shit.
Wait.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
I was like, real quick, the math wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, your math's there, dude. I'm just feeling a little old. That's all, Yeah,
Right.
dude. So back in the day when you went through, I was overseeing all the clinical delivery, right? So everything from detox, the group facilitation, the health office, like anything that had to do with kind of the day-to-day journey the clients took, that was all kind of underneath my umbrella. And so it makes sense that you don't remember me very much, at least from your treatment experience, because usually if people ended up in my office, it's because they either A, wanted to leave, or B, they were so pissed at their primary counselor that they had to talk to their boss, right?
Whose office I spent a lot of time in was Danielle's.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
That's where you went when you got in trouble.
When you got in trouble, yeah, dude. And great segue, by the way, to what I remember of Henry and treatment.
Oh shit!
Not a lot of trouble. I wouldn't say that stood out, but you suffered one of the plights that many do in treatment, all genders, and that is that you showed up to treatment looking pretty good, and when that happens, people tend to fall in love and flirt a little bit, and maybe attention wasn't as routinely on the coursework as much as your peers, I'll say. But dude, one of the things that did stand out that I do see kind of perpetuating through your work here on the pod and your presence online, at least, is super active, super in the gym, which I loved and I feel is such a vital part of life, and especially life in recovery. And the other part is that you were funny, dude. You know, I think your sense of humor is it's one of those things where perhaps for some it may be a little too much. For me, it feels just right, man. I like to play and poke around, and that's what stood out, man. And I think coming into treatment at 28, you're old enough to kind of know the ways of the world, but also not too old that you can't learn something new. And
right.
And that's what I remember, dude. You know?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. And yeah, I do wonder now, I was thinking about it today leading up to this, and my program, I would say, looks a little different than a lot of people in like a traditional NA and AA program. And even though I do attend those meetings sometimes, but I was thinking about that. And like you said, the active part, and that's what Elevate was really big on, was what else do you do, like hobbies, activities, keep yourself busy, find something you love. If I remember right, like that was a big part of the program. And now that I'm thinking about it, like that is how I work my program now, and not so much like a traditional NA program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
sorry,
am I remembering that correctly? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you are. Mm-hmm.
I think it's so funny how like the ego can still get stroked, right? Hey, Jeremy, tell me what you remembered about me at rehab, brother. and then he comes through and he's like, hey, you were the sexiest guy in there. All the women wanted you. And, you were jacked. And by the way, you're hilarious. Like we needed to pump up Henry any more than we needed.
Yeah. Well, you know what, dude? Like, here's the thing, dude. We got to celebrate the ego. You know what I'm saying? We do. It's here to serve us in a way if we know what's happening. It's also just like by nature. Like I said, like if people ended up like the people who really remember me from around that time, like 2015 to 2017, if they really remember me, they were having a really, really rough time. So the fact that I remember all of Henry's fun qualities and just kind of like bebopping around treatment, like lifting weights and flirting with the girls, like that's a good testament that he was working his program. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, actually, and I have to defend myself here, and Jeremy can back me up. I texted him. I told him I was going to ask him what he remembered about me, and I specifically said, I'm not asking for you to stroke me. I actually would like to know if
that's true.
Like, if I my character defects, if I was an asshole, like I think would be more fun for the podcast is like this motherfucker was a goddamn mess. He was the angriest, which I don't think I honestly really was at that point because I was a little older. So my next rehab, they actually said I was quite the miserable prick when I got there, but I think I was kind of ready at that point. But we digress. We're going to get into all this a little bit more, but I want to start with a little more about you. So can you tell us and the people a little bit about your addiction and what brought you to recovery?
Yeah, for sure. So I got sober in 2009 and got a sober date coming up here in a couple of weeks, and I'm pretty pumped about that. But
15 years coming
15
up,
years,
or?
Man. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Dude.
Yeah, man. Thank you guys. So I'm pretty pumped.
Awesome.
I got sober at 22. And my story is very akin to everybody else's, man. I started drinking way too young. I think a lot of that, and I'll be brief on it, but I was adopted, right? And from the time I was a little kid, I always felt like something was weird, something was off. I'm like this little brown kid. I got like super white parents, and it was, and the external world never let me forget it. You know what I mean? Like the amount of times we'd be at like a baseball game or a soccer game, and parents would be like, "Oh, so you're Jeremy's parents, huh? Like how did that work? Because you're like really white and he's not." And I'm a little kid, and little kids just internalize everything, right? So I'm like, oh my God, why am I so different? And I think
is this in Santa Cruz, Monterey area?
No.
Is that where you're from?
No, so I was born and raised in Denver, actually.
Okay.
Littleton, to be more exact. And you know, so I always had
Just
this
so
thing.
I
Right?
get the picture, is that
Yeah.
predominantly white?
It
Was
was
it
at the
predominantly-
time. Yeah, it's suburban, dude. Like the most like cliche suburban little community, right? And
So it heightened your feeling of otherness.
yeah, oh, big time. Yeah, big time. That was really it. Is you know, I felt other than, different, and just this like kind of inherent disconnection. I didn't know what from, or like what. Like I missed something, but I didn't know what it was I was missing. You know, it was a very weird experience. And so then when I was 10, I found out I was adopted, and you know, and it was like I'm 10, so I don't have the capacity to really understand, but it started making a little bit of sense. And then, you know, middle school, I realized that that alcohol was a thing, and that if you drank it, it kind of made everything feel just a little bit better, you know, and it made things a little easier. And naturally, that became my brilliant strategy. Was you know, if I didn't like how I felt, or I felt something unfamiliar and I didn't want it to be there anymore, I could, you know, drink a little bit and there it'd go. And in high school, my grades really started dropping. I was super smart, did great on all my tests, crushed the ACT and the SATs, and drove my parents crazy because I tested super high, but my grades were super low, and nobody could quite figure it out. And I had ADHD, you know, diagnosed since I was a little kid, and all these, you know, all these different pieces, and you know, falling in love and getting heartbroken, and all the normal high school kind of ailments that young people go through. Only I didn't know how to really hold any of that, and so I drank quite a bit. And then fast forward, I dropped out of college to pursue a career in music. That didn't really work out because I don't know if you guys know, but in the music industry, there's a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking, a lot of girls, and that was all a lot more fun than college. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I
And a lot more fun than showing up for your shows or practice.
That's it, man. And you know, so fast forward, dude, it's 2008, and my life was a complete disaster, dude. I mean, every aspect of my life was fallen apart, and it was the result of gross neglect on my behalf, both internal and external. And of course, the fact that as a result of these things that I had neglected, I'd had quite a bit of, I had some problematic situations on my hand that weren't easy to deal with. So I drank and I used drugs, and that was how I dealt with it. And so in the summer of 2008, my roommate kicked me out of my apartment just a couple of months after my parents told me they were divorcing. My girlfriend at the time broke up with me, couldn't deal with the alcoholic and crazy mania that came with being my girlfriend. And and my roommate said, dude, you know what, man, like, we're done. You got to get out of here. And I had nowhere to go. And I asked my dad if I could move home, but he told me he was moving and my mom didn't want to deal with my shit. And I said, well, dude, I got nowhere to go. You know, what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, and he was kind of half kidding, but he said, you know what? I mean, you could pitch a tent out back. It's summertime. You'd be all right, you know? And that's exactly what I did. So I threw up a tent. I ran an extension cord from the house, and I thought to myself, all right, I'm going to live in this tent for like 2 months, right? And I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to save up some money. I'm going to get a nice little apartment. I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to quit drugging, you know, get myself a nice girl, and that'll be my life, you know?
I can tell you how this story ends. Go on.
Yeah, it didn't end well, man. I stayed in that tent until January of 2009, man. So I was in that tent through the Colorado winter, and let me tell you, dude, it was not the business, man. I mean,
Wow.
the tent itself was pretty dope. Like, as far as tents goes, it was like big tent, you know what I mean? Like, I had a little bit of power, dude. So like, you know, I was living in a tent, but it was like pretty first class, you know what I'm saying? Like, as far as homelessness goes. And anyways, so I had what alcoholics refer to as a moment of clarity after a failed suicide attempt, and I went to treatment, man, and that was it.
Nice, dude.
Dude,
That's-
first of all, that is the best 5-minute lead that I've ever heard. You did an excellent job of condensing
Awesome.
it and hitting all the points. That was incredible. Go ahead.
Right
Caleb.
on.
yeah, dude. That I will piggyback off that. That was the greatest quick, synopsis of, hey, my life was in shambles. I almost killed myself, and here I am today, looking fantastic on a fucking balcony. I mean, it was great, dude. It had everything.
Awesome.
I do think there's something that's really interesting about that from the adoption side. My dad was adopted.
Oh, awesome.
And when you look at my my dad's family pictures, it's a bunch of pasty white people.
Yeah.
And my dad's from an Italian family, so he's huge with jet black hair in these pictures. He's tan.
Yeah.
And it just never made any sense. I mean, my grandpa Davis was a ginger. His nickname was Red. So I mean, and lo and behold, my dad liked to party as well. So I don't know if there's like a secret correlation with that when you guys figure that stuff out as adopted children, but there might be something to that, man. I mean,
oh yeah. No, there is a correlation, and it's not so secret. There is a correlation. They don't have a lot of data on it yet, but I was at a conference a couple of years back, and a clinical director for this killer outpatient down in San Diego, I think it was, did a whole presentation about adoptees and drug addiction, and it was absolutely fascinating. And when you think about the mechanics of it, it makes perfect sense, because addiction's the result of disconnection and shame and trauma. And when you're adopted, you come out of the gate with all three kind of at onset of your life, and a lot of that doesn't really register in the psyche. Not necessarily. It's mostly in the body, but absolutely in the subconscious. A lot of times, people that are adopted spend a lot of time in the hospital alone because they're trying to keep a certain amount of distance between the birth parents and the baby. Just because it can get complicated if there's too much attachment. And the result, of course, is that adoptees out of the gate develop attachment issues, right?
Yeah.
And so, I really don't like to victimize myself or other adoptees like, oh, we're, by default, like behind everybody else or more traumatized. I don't like going into that. However, we are starting our lives on a loss, and that loss registers very deeply, and I would say more often than not, it's completely unconscious. And so it does make childhood and adolescence a little sticky,
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, like, your baseline feeling, and I think it would be more subconscious, but is like, my parents didn't want me. Right. I feel like that's, and whatever, there's a million different reasons why, but I would feel like for someone who, is adopted, that it's just that thought is kind of in the back of their head. Like you said, whether you even realize it or not, there's something about me and my family and whatever happened that, they didn't want me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
that's
one step further, there's like, the idea, oh, I wasn't wanted, that's like the leaves and the branches, right? At the root of that thought is, I'm not lovable. I'm not wantable. Right. There's something wrong with me. It has nothing to do with my parents who didn't want me. It's that there's something about me that is undesirable. Me as who I am is undesirable. Those are the roots. Right. And they manifest as these other ideas, but at the roots, it's like, it's some pretty deep attachment stuff. And the good news is that, adoption and the way it's done now is radically different than when I was adopted. And I think that we're bringing a lot more awareness to that kind of thing now. But of course, that doesn't do much for the millions of people that have, kind of been walking around with this really deep shame and abandonment and attachment issues and stuff like that,
You know what, man? It's super crazy to hear you say that stuff because now I'm sitting here trying to. I've tried to psychoanalyze my dad in ways that he's processed this, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. My dad always will see my grandma and grandpa Davis as his parents.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a wrench thrown into this, and now we're going off on an adoption tangent. But my brother was working at a restaurant and actually came in contact with the Bonanno family,
Wow.
and then met his birth mother who gave him up, and now we are in contact with them.
Awesome.
But the crazy thing is, and luckily my dad doesn't listen to this podcast because it'd be like, why the hell are you telling everybody this?
Yeah.
He has this weird. I don't know if he has this crazy expectation of what that relationship would look like, but I don't feel like in his mind it's adding up to what he imagined it would be, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And it's something I could never understand, right? So like be like, oh hey, she was in town or something. Like he'll ask me questions because I'm in contact with my grandmother Nan.
Yeah.
And it's super weird. It's a very tricky dynamic, man. And so it's interesting talking to you being someone who was adopted.
Yeah. And I wanna push back just a little bit, very gently on one thing you said.
Please do.
And that is that you couldn't understand, but I don't agree. I think that you can more than you may realize, and here's why. So